I turned 63 that evening, and all I wanted was a simple celebration with my son Marcus, his wife Sophia, and maybe a few close friends. Nothing extravagant, just good conversation, decent wine, and perhaps a toast to surviving another year without completely losing my mind. Instead, I ended the night sitting in my car in an empty parking lot, hands shaking on the steering wheel, wondering how my only child had just publicly stolen my entire life right in front of everyone I cared about. But before I tell you how I made them both pay for what they did, and how I turned their perfect little scheme into their worst nightmare, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I want to know if betrayal feels the same no matter what corner of the world you're in. The evening started innocently enough. Sophia had picked this trendy little bistro downtown, one of those places with exposed brick walls and servers who call you friend while charging $30 for a piece of fish. I should have known something was wrong when Marcus kept checking his watch, but I brushed it off. My son had always been punctual to a fault, just like his father. I barely settled into my chair when Sophia reached under the table and produced a small gift bag, tissue paper arranged like delicate flower petals. Inside was a tiny yellow onesie with "World's Best Grandmother" embroidered across the front in silver thread. My heart stopped for just a moment before it started racing with joy. "We thought it was time," Sophia said, her smile so wide it looked painted on, "to start thinking about the future, especially now that we'll need more room." She glanced at Marcus, who nodded with this strange, rehearsed calmness that made my stomach twist. "More room?" I asked, setting the onesie down carefully. Sophia leaned forward, her manicured fingers drumming against the table. "We're just so grateful, Helen. Not every mother would have this understanding." The table went quiet. My friends Sarah and Tom stopped mid-conversation to stare. I frowned, completely lost about what I was supposed to be understanding. Before I could ask what she meant, Marcus stood up and tapped his fork against his wine glass. The sound cut through the restaurant chatter like a blade. "Can I have everyone's attention for just a moment?" His voice carried that same artificial cheerfulness that had been bothering me all evening. "Tonight isn't just about celebrating my amazing mother's birthday," he began, and I felt something cold crawl up my spine. "It's also about sharing some incredible news about our family's future." Sophia had her phone out now, recording everything. The red light blinked at me like a warning I was too slow to understand. "We're moving into Mom's apartment," Marcus announced, his voice bright with false enthusiasm. "It just makes perfect sense. She doesn't need all that space anymore, and we're starting a family. It's such a generous gift from the woman who raised me to always put family first." The words hit me like physical blows. Glasses clinked around the table while my friends offered confused congratulations. I sat there frozen, my fork suspended halfway to my mouth, feeling like I'd been dropped into someone else's nightmare. Marcus looked directly at me, his smile too wide, too expectant. "Right, Mom? You're excited about this next chapter for all of us." The pressure in the room collapsed around me like a house of cards. Everyone was staring, waiting for my reaction. Sophia's camera was still rolling. My mouth opened, but no words came out. So I did the only thing my panicked brain could manage. I nodded, not because I agreed, not because I'd ever discussed this insane plan, but because I felt trapped on a stage in the middle of a play I'd never auditioned for, with an audience expecting me to know my lines. I forced what I hoped looked like a smile, took a sip of wine that tastes like sawdust, and prayed for the conversation to move on. It didn't. If anything, my weak nod seemed to unleash something in Sophia. She launched into an excited monologue about redecorating plans, paint colors, and furniture arrangements. "Of course, we'll modernize everything," she laughed, scrolling through Pinterest on her phone. "Those heavy curtains have to go, And we'll definitely need to update the kitchen. Oh, and that wallpaper in the bedroom, very dated. She said it like she was doing me a favor by insulting my home. Marcus chimed in with reassurances about giving me plenty of time to find somewhere else to live. No pressure at all, Mom. Maybe a nice little studio closer to that community center you mentioned. A studio. After 35 years in a 3-bedroom apartment that held every memory of my marriage, every photo of my late husband David, every piece of furniture we'd chosen together. They talked about my life, my home, my future like I wasn't sitting right there. Like I was already gone. The meal turned to cardboard in my mouth as Sophia described which room would become the nursery and how she'd finally have space for a proper home office. Helen, you must be so relieved, Sarah said carefully, clearly trying to make sense of what she was witnessing. It'll be nice to have less to worry about. I wanted to scream that I'd never agreed to any of this, that my apartment wasn't some burden I was desperate to escape. Instead, I mumbled something about family being important and excused myself to the bathroom. In the mirror, my reflection looked like a stranger. Pale, shocked, older than I remembered. I splashed cold water on my face and tried to make sense of what had just happened. When had I supposedly agreed to give up my home? When had we discussed this life-altering decision that everyone seemed to think I'd made? By the time I returned to the table, they'd moved on to discussing timeline details. Marcus was saying something about how quickly they could get movers, while Sophia wondered aloud if they should keep any of my furniture or donate it all. My furniture. The dining set David and I had saved for months to buy. The rocking chair where I'd nursed Marcus as a baby. I sat through the rest of dinner in a fog, nodding at appropriate moments while my entire world crumbled around me. When the check came, Marcus insisted on paying, making a big show of celebrating new beginnings and family generosity. The whole performance made me physically ill. Walking to my car, afterward, my legs felt unsteady, not from the wine, but from the realization that my son and his wife had just publicly stolen my life, and I'd sat there and let them do it. The drive home was a blur of street lights and growing panic. My apartment looked different when I walked through the door that night. Not safe anymore. Not entirely mine. I found myself checking the locks twice, then 3 times, like Marcus might show up with moving boxes at any moment. I sat at my kitchen table for hours, staring at the walls that Sophia had already mentally repainted. Every corner held memories she was planning to erase. The coffee stain on the counter from the morning David had his heart attack. The height marks on the doorframe where we'd measured Marcus growing up. The chip in the ceramic tile from when I dropped my grandmother's mixing bowl while baking his birthday cakes. Around midnight, something nagged at me, a memory I couldn't quite place. I went to David's old desk and pulled out the bottom drawer, the one I hadn't touched since his funeral 3 years ago. Buried under insurance papers and bank statements, I found what my subconscious had been trying to remember, a power of attorney document signed during my hospital stay 2 years ago when I'd had emergency surgery for a burst appendix. Marcus had handled everything while I was unconscious for 3 days. I'd been so grateful for his help, so touched by his devotion. The document gave him legal authority to make decisions if I was incapacitated. My hands shook as I read the fine print. The power of attorney was still active. I'd never revoked it because I'd forgotten it existed. And Marcus clearly hadn't forgotten anything. I called my lawyer first thing the next morning. Janet's voice was grim when she confirmed my worst fears. Helen, with that document, Marcus can make legal claims about your living situation if he argues you're not capable of managing your affairs independently. It's not ironclad, but it gives him leverage, especially if he can demonstrate that you agreed to the arrangement. But I never agreed to anything. I said, my voice cracking, the recording his wife made might suggest otherwise. We need to revoke this immediately and document your mental competency. But Helen, if they're already telling people you've agreed to this, there's several steps ahead of us. That's when the full scope of their plan became clear. This wasn't some spontaneous announcement at dinner. They'd been plotting this for months, maybe years. The power of attorney was their insurance policy. The public announcement was their way of creating witnesses to my supposed agreement. The recording was their evidence. I spent the next week in a strange kind of limbo. Marcus called twice, both times with updates about their moving timeline and suggestions for assisted living facilities he'd researched for me. Assisted living. At 63, with no health problems beyond occasional insomnia and a slightly creaky knee, Sophia posted the video from dinner on social media with a caption about grateful hearts and new beginnings. The comments were full of people praising my generosity and their excitement about becoming parents. Complete strangers were congratulating me on my decision to downsize and make room for the next generation. But the breaking point came when I found them in my apartment. I'd gone to the grocery store on a Thursday afternoon, just a quick trip for milk and bread. When I came home, Marcus's car was in my parking spot. I climbed the stairs with growing dread, and sure enough, my front door was unlocked. I found them in my bedroom. Sophia was measuring the windows while Marcus stood in the corner taking photos with his phone. They'd moved my jewelry box to the dresser and opened my closet doors. "Oh, Helen," Sophia chirped when she saw me. "We were just getting a head start on planning. Marcus still has his key from when you were in the hospital, so we thought we'd take some measurements." She held up a tape measure, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I hope you don't mind," Marcus added, not looking remotely sorry. "We wanted to surprise you with some preliminary design ideas. Sophia has such great taste. They were in my bedroom, going through my things, planning how to rearrange my life while I was buying groceries. The violation was so complete, so casual, that I couldn't speak for several seconds. "Get out," I finally managed. Sophia blinked. "What?" "Get out of my home. Both of you. Right now." Marcus stepped forward, his expression shifting to that patronizing concern I was starting to recognize. "Mom, we're just trying to help. This is stressful for everyone, and we thought—" "Get out." The words exploded from me with such force that Sophia actually stepped backward. "This is my home. You don't live here. You don't have permission to be here. Get out before I call the police." They left, but not before Marcus reminded me that he was just looking out for my best interests, and Sophia muttered something about ungrateful under her breath. I changed the locks that same day, but the damage was done. They'd crossed a line I didn't even know existed. That night, I sat in my kitchen with a yellow legal pad and started making lists. Everything I knew about Marcus and Sophia's finances. Their plans. Their timeline. Their weaknesses. If they wanted to play games with my life, I was going to make sure I won. The first thing I discovered was that they were broke. Not just low on savings, but actively drowning in debt. Marcus's job at the marketing firm was less stable than he'd let on. Sophia's freelance graphic design work barely covered her car payment. They'd been counting on my apartment not just as free housing, but as their financial salvation. The second thing I learned was that they'd already put a deposit down on a storage unit. They were planning to pack up my entire life and stick it in a 10 by 10 concrete box while they played house with my furniture and my memories. But the third thing I discovered changed everything. While researching lawyers, I found out that my apartment building was about to go condo. The landlord had been quietly offering to sell individual units to longtime tenants at below-market prices before opening sales to the public. I'd thrown the letter away weeks ago, thinking I'd never be able to afford it. That's when my plan began to take shape. I called the landlord the next morning. Yes, the offer was still available. Yes, I could purchase my apartment for significantly less than market value. And yes, there was a right of first refusal clause that meant I could buy it before anyone else, even if someone else made a higher offer. I liquidated David's life insurance policy, the one I'd been saving for emergencies. This qualified as an emergency. I borrowed against my retirement account. I called in favors from old friends. Within 2 weeks, I owned my apartment outright. Marcus called the day after the sale went through. His voice was tight, with barely controlled panic. "Mom, we need to talk. The landlord says you bought the apartment? That doesn't make sense. We had an arrangement." "We never had an arrangement, Marcus. You made an announcement. There's a difference." "But you agreed. Everyone heard you agree. Sophia has it on video." I nodded because I was ambushed and humiliated. That's not the same as agreeing to give up my home. There was a long pause. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Harder. More like his father's when David was angry. "Mom, be reasonable. We've already made plans. Sophia's pregnant. We need this space." "Then you should have asked instead of assumed." "We shouldn't have to ask. This is family. Family helps family. Family doesn't steal from family, Marcus. Family doesn't lie and manipulate and record conversations to use as blackmail later." He hung up on me. Sophia called an hour later, crying. "The pregnancy hormones," she said. "The stress." They'd looked at so many apartments, but nothing was as perfect as mine. Couldn't we work something out? Maybe they could rent from me? I almost felt sorry for her until she added, "Besides, it's not like you'll be around forever to enjoy it." That comment cost them everything. I called my lawyer that afternoon and made an appointment to update my will. Marcus had been my sole beneficiary, set to inherit my retirement accounts, my savings, and any property I owned. After our conversation, he was about to inherit exactly nothing. Instead, I left everything to a scholarship fund for single mothers pursuing education, women who actually needed help instead of demanding it, women who said please and thank you instead of assuming the world owed them whatever they wanted. But I wasn't done yet. I started documenting everything, every entitled phone call, every guilt trip, every manipulation attempt. I saved Sophia's social media posts about my generous gift and her plans for redecorating. I kept records of every time they tried to use the power of attorney to pressure me. Then I went on the offensive. I called everyone who'd been at that birthday dinner. Sarah, Tom, my neighbor Carol who'd helped plan the celebration. I told them the truth about what had really happened, how I'd been ambushed and manipulated, how they'd never asked permission for anything, how they'd been planning to throw me into assisted living while they played house with my life. The response was swift and brutal. Sarah had shared the story with her book club. Tom told his poker buddies. Carol mentioned it to the building's gossip network. Within days, Marcus and Sophia's social media celebration had turned into a public relations nightmare. Comments on Sophia's posts shifted from congratulations to criticism. People started asking pointed questions about consent and elder abuse. Someone shared an article about adult children who financially exploit their aging parents. The video of Marcus's announcement, which Sophia had meant as proof of my agreement, suddenly looked like evidence of manipulation to everyone who knew the real story. Marcus showed up at my door on a Sunday morning, looking haggard and desperate. I spoke to him through the chain lock I'd installed. "Mom, you have to help us. Sophia's crying all the time. Her family thinks we're horrible people. My boss heard about this, and now he's questioning my character. You're ruining our lives. I'm not ruining anything, Marcus. I'm just telling the truth about what you did. We're family, he shouted, loud enough that Mrs. Patterson next door probably heard every word. We made a mistake, okay? We should have talked to you first. But we can fix this. We can make it right. How? I asked through the door. How exactly do you make right the fact that you tried to steal my home? That you planned to erase my marriage, my memories, my entire adult life, so you could have more closet space? We wouldn't have erased anything. We would have kept the important stuff. You don't get to decide what's important to me, Marcus. You don't get to decide anything about my life anymore. He left, but not before kicking my welcome mat across the hallway. Real, mature behavior from someone who thought he deserved to own property. The harassment continued for weeks. Sophia left voicemails alternating between tears and threats. Marcus sent emails with subject lines like final offer and last chance. They tried to get mutual friends to intervene, painting me as a stubborn old woman who was destroying their dreams out of spite. But I'd learned something important over those weeks. I'd learned that I was stronger than I'd thought. I'd learned that being alone didn't mean being powerless. And I'd learned that sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones most willing to sacrifice your happiness for their convenience. The final confrontation came 6 months later. Marcus and Sophia were apparently facing eviction from their current apartment. They'd been counting on my place so completely that they'd never made backup plans. Sophia's pregnancy was showing now, and they were desperate. They showed up together this time, both of them looking exhausted and defeated. Marcus had lost weight. Sophia's designer handbags had been replaced with a worn canvas tote. They asked if we could talk, really talk, about finding a solution that worked for everyone. I let them in, but only after making it clear that this was my home, and they were guests who could leave at any time. Mom, Marcus began, his voice quieter than I'd heard it in months. We know we handled this wrong. We should have talked to you first. We should have asked instead of assuming. But we're desperate here. Sophia's due in 3 months, and we don't have anywhere to go. Sophia nodded, tears already starting. Helen, I know I said some terrible things. I was stressed and scared, and I took it out on you. But we really need help. The baby's coming whether we're ready or not. They looked genuinely sorry, genuinely frightened. For a moment, I almost wavered, almost considered whether there might be some way to help them that didn't involve giving up everything I'd built. Then Sophia added, we could even pay you rent. Not much, but something. And we'd let you stay in the guest room until you find somewhere else. Let me stay in the guest room, in my own home, until I found somewhere else. Get out, I said quietly. Mom, please. Get out of my home. Both of you. Don't call me. Don't visit me. Don't send me pictures of the baby or updates about your lives. You made your choice when you decided my life was worth less than your convenience. Now live with it. You can't mean that, Marcus said, his voice rising. I'm your son. This baby is your grandchild. You can't just cut us off forever over a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Marcus. It was attempted theft. It was emotional manipulation. It was disrespect so complete that you thought you could steal my life and make me thank you for it. Sophia was sobbing now, ugly crying that made her makeup run in dark streaks down her cheeks. We're going to be homeless. Our baby is going to be born, and we won't have anywhere to live. That's not my problem anymore, I said, opening the door. You should have thought about that before you decided I was disposable. They left, and this time I knew they wouldn't be back. That was 8 months ago. I heard through mutual friends that they eventually found a studio apartment across town. Sophia had the baby, a girl they named Emma. Marcus lost his job, but found something else that pays less. They're struggling, but they're surviving. I don't feel guilty about it. Not anymore. I wake up every morning in my own bedroom, surrounded by photos of David and memories of our life together. I make coffee in the kitchen where we shared thousands of conversations. I sit on the balcony where he proposed to me 38 years ago and watch the sunrise over the city we loved. My life isn't what I expected it to be at 63. I thought I'd be a grandmother by now, babysitting on weekends and spoiling a little one with toys and treats. I thought my son would visit for Sunday dinners and bring his family to celebrate holidays in the home where he grew up. Instead, I'm learning to live without the family I thought I had. I'm discovering that solitude isn't the same as loneliness, and that protecting yourself from people who would exploit your love isn't selfish. It's necessary. I've made new friends in my building, people who understand that respect is earned and boundaries matter. I volunteer at the Literacy Center downtown, helping adults learn to read. I've taken up painting again, something I gave up when Marcus was young and needed all my attention. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh, if there might have been some middle ground where everyone got something but no one lost everything. Then I remember Sophia measuring my bedroom windows while I was buying groceries. I remember Marcus telling strangers that I didn't need space anymore, like my needs stopped matching the moment his wife got pregnant. I remember the casual cruelty of assuming I'd be grateful to give up everything I'd worked for. So they could have what they wanted without earning it. And I remember that power of attorney document tucked away in David's desk like a loaded gun they'd planned to use against me when the moment was right. No, I wasn't too harsh. If anything, I was too kind for too long. The scholarship fund I established in Marcus's place has already helped 3 women complete their degrees. Single mothers who juggled jobs and school and childcare because they refused to let circumstances defeat them. Women who said thank you when they received help and used it to build better lives for themselves and their children. I get letters from them, sometimes updates about their progress and gratitude for the opportunity. It's the kind of family connection I thought I'd lost, people who appreciate what they're given and make the most of every chance. Marcus sends a card every year on my birthday, always the same message, thinking of you and hoping we can talk soon. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he did, just the assumption that time will make me forget, that eventually I'll get lonely enough to forgive anything for the chance to be part of his life again. He's wrong about that too. I'm not lonely. I'm free. Free from the exhausting work of loving people who see that love as weakness to exploit. Free from the constant anxiety of wondering when the next demand will come, what the next manipulation will look like. Free to live in my own home, surrounded by my own memories, making my own choices about how to spend whatever time I have left. If you're watching this and you've dealt with family members who think your love means you owe them everything, I want you to know something important. You don't owe anyone your happiness. You don't owe anyone your security. You don't owe anyone your home, your savings, your peace of mind, or your future just because you share DNA. Love that comes with conditions isn't love, it's manipulation. Respect that disappears the moment you set boundaries isn't respect, it's performance. And family that treats you like an obstacle to overcome rather than a person to cherish isn't family worth keeping. I lost a son and a daughter-in-law, but I kept my home, my dignity, and my right to make my own decisions about my own life. Some people might call that a tragedy. I call it a fair trade. The apartment is quiet most evenings now, but it's a peaceful quiet. Not the silence of loss, but the silence of contentment. I can sit in my kitchen and remember David without wondering if someone's going to knock on the door and tell me those memories aren't worth keeping. I can rearrange furniture without asking permission from people who think my taste is outdated. I can make plans for tomorrow without wondering if someone else has already made different plans for me. At 63, I'm finally learning what it means to belong to myself. It took losing the family. I thought I had to find the strength I didn't know I possessed. It took their betrayal to teach me the difference between being generous and being a victim. I wouldn't recommend this path to anyone, but I can't say I regret walking it either. Sometimes the price of peace is higher than you want to pay, but that doesn't mean it's not worth paying. And sometimes the family you're born with isn't the family you're meant to keep. Sometimes loving yourself means saying goodbye to people who can't love you the same way in return. That's a lesson I learned too late to teach my son, but maybe not too late to share with you. Your life belongs to you. Your home belongs to you. Your choices belong to you. And anyone who tries to take those things away, even with pretty words about family and gratitude and new beginnings, is someone you're better off without. Trust me on that one. I'm living proof that you can survive losing everything you thought mattered and discover that what actually mattered was your right to keep it in the first place. The sunset looks different from my balcony now. Not sadder, just different. Like I'm seeing it with new eyes. Eyes that belong to someone who finally understands that being alone by choice is infinitely better than being used by people who should have known better. And if Marcus is watching this somehow, if this story finds its way back to him, I want him to know that I hope he's learned something from all this. I hope he's teaching his daughter about respect and boundaries and the difference between asking for help and demanding it. I hope he's become the kind of father who would never let anyone treat her the way he treated me. But mostly, I hope he's happy with the choice he made. Because I'm certainly happy with mine. The apartment is mine. The future is mine. The peace is mine. And after everything we've been through, that feels like the biggest victory of all. So that's my story. That's how my son demanded my apartment for his wife, and how I sold it and cut them both out of my will instead. Some endings aren't happy, but they're still the right ones. Sometimes protecting yourself from the people you love most is the most loving thing you can do for them, and especially for yourself. Thank you for listening. Thank you for understanding. And if you're facing something similar in your own life, thank you for being strong enough to know that you deserve better than people who mistake your kindness for weakness. You deserve better than that. You deserve so much better than that. And you deserve to live in your own home on your own terms for as long as you choose to call it yours. If stories like this touch your heart, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Your support means everything to me, and I promise to keep sharing these real-life moments that remind us what truly matters. Tell me in the comment section where you are watching from.